Thanks for joining us on I Met Jesus. This is where we are exploring the lives of some people in Scripture who encounter Jesus Christ and they walk away changed one way or another. You can't be neutral when you encounter Christ. We hope that you learn a lot from the podcast, and we hope that it challenges you and what your encounter with Christ is like as well.
Welcome back to the Crossroads Podcast, where we're one person short today.
Oh, finally.
Okay. So then the question becomes, A, Jason, did you use your power and influence to eliminate Wes off of this podcast? B, if not, where is beloved Wes? Has he taken off because of the podcast about him?
Well, you know how these days, these young kids, they've got to do some huge event for every single celebration. You know, back in the day when you wanted to invite somebody to homecoming, you just invited them to homecoming. Now we've got the whole HOCO invites and then prom invitations. Promposal, and then like gender reveal parties, bachelor party. When you had a bachelor party,
I actually did not.
Okay.
I joke with my wife about that all the time.
I had one. It was an evening at a place called Speed Zone in downtown Dallas.
Wow.
Okay. Which was great. Now they got to take, week-long trips. So Wes turned 30. Wes turned 33. And Caitlin just turned 30, so they had to blow it out, man. So they went on a huge vacation and all this stuff because they need to go big for it.
Wow, you're about to have a milestone birthday. Should I anticipate you not doing something special?
No, I'm absolutely gonna blow it out too. So. Crystal and I are going on a vacation. She was like, "What do you want to do for your 50th?" I was like, "Let's go somewhere." So yeah, I'm totally being a hypocrite.
But I guess 50th feels more consequential than 33.
Yeah, the half-century mark I feel like is worthy of a celebration.
Do you think the quarter-century mark should come along with something cooler than it's easy to rent a car? Like, I always thought that was kind of a disappointment as you get to 25 and you're like, it's less of a hassle to rent a car.
Yeah, it's true.
And you're like, that's what I get?
Yeah, I think those are big ones. 25, 50, 75.
Yeah.
Those are legit. You can go crazy on those. And anyway, and then to be completely fair to Wes, they got back from their trip and he's at a conference for our region ministry that happens on Monday nights and stuff. So he's actually educating and, getting close to the Lord and people.
The one thing I will request that you don't do for your birthday is please don't ever say you only turned 50 once, because
oh my gosh,
you only turn every age once. That's how ages work. And
that's how
it really bothers me every single time somebody's like, you only turned 16 once. And I was like, yeah, and 17, and
18,
all the other
19,
numbers.
20. Yes, exactly. I mean, I don't know. That was, I always said that. And then it was weird with my mama because she was like, she did the 29 and holding. And I'm like, Grandma, that gets real weird when your grandkids are older than you.
That is a good point. Although that was one of my favorite moments in Germany when one of the kids on my team guessed that I was 25. And I was like, I want to give you money. Thank you very much for saying that. Also, I heard somebody say this, and it's been stuck in my brain for like a week. What do you think about the concept that if Jesus would have wanted the United States to follow the metric system, he would have had 10 apostles? Because that has been locked into my brain for like a week, and it makes a lot of sense.
So now we're going to debate the metric versus imperial. I mean, you didn't know where this podcast was going. Without Wes, it took about 3 minutes before the wheels came off. Let's go imperial versus metric.
I think we're figuring out it wasn't this denominator that got us off course. Sorry, I've just had some very strange thoughts in my brain today.
I do think it's funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
I dig it.
But also, we are going to talk about Matthew today, so it's felt apropos.
Yeah, I like it. We're getting into one, another one of the disciples. Let me ask. You asked me a question. Let me
please.
A turnabout is fair play, as they say. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to give you the lines from some very famous things. Let me see if you can either identify them or finish them for me. Like, do you know what starts with the line, "Call me Ishmael"?
Don't tell me. Moby Dick.
There you go, Moby Dick. What about this line? You ever heard of this? It was the best of times. Do you know how it goes after that?
It was the worst.
It was the worst of times.
The Tale of Two Cities.
Okay, what about this? I'm 36 years old. I love my family. I love baseball, and I'm about to become a farmer. But until I heard of the voice, I'd never done a crazy thing in my whole life.
Field of Dreams.
Field of Dreams. A long
Costner.
time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
And nobody actually says that.
That's
That
true.
just appears
It
on the
does
screen.
scroll.
But yes, that is from the Star Wars universe.
Yes. So my point in doing that.
Are you about to ask me to finish important scripture things? You made me look like a jerk because I'm like, ooh, I don't know.
Oh, that would be a fun game.
You got Moby Dick, no problem, but you can't finish this at a mark.
Somehow you got these books, and we got you to finish Taylor Swift lyrics, but then scriptures get off the rails. You would not be alone, though. Sadly, but so Matthew is the guy we're going to talk about today. Matthew writes one of the books we know. Matter of fact, it kicks off not chronologically, but it kicks off the New Testament, and his opening line is a record of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, the son of Abraham. Doesn't that just grab you?
That's how you know you've moved to a very exciting next chapter. What can you give us and I know this is a longer conversation, probably for another day. Is there a truncated version of why Matthew takes, I guess, chapter 1 of the New Testament, we'll say?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to lean heavily into it when we get into his story, because what's so interesting about this, like, you know, he's literally setting up the Christmas story going, let's talk about a genealogy, instead of like the Once Upon a Time type kind of like grand story entrance that you would think.
Though, to be fair, there are multiple spots in the Bible where they do not tell it in the most narratively pleasing way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I think the thing that is interesting to me about the way that Matthew kicks off the book of Matthew, his letter, is that he gives us right off the bat a family tree that is free of Photoshop and filters. Like, it is going to be a hardcore thing. And there's a reason that I think that's really important. Like, he's going to tell you the story of Manasseh, who threw his firstborn son into a fire. He's going to tell you the story of Judah, who was an adulterer and a cold-hearted hypocrite. Rahab, who is a prostitute. Like, all those people are going to be in the family tree of Jesus. And I think the reason that's important is because we're going to meet Matthew in a minute, but Matthew doesn't start a disciple. Matthew, whose original name is Levi, which their names would give you an idea of what they were supposed to be. So he is going to be called Levi, which would have been from the tribe of the Levites, which were the priests that are, you know, these guys that are supposed to grow up like he's basically supposed to be like, okay, he's going to be like the Billy Graham of his like family, but instead he does not go that way at all. It's going to go really, really bad. He is going to be a huge disappointment. He's never going to live up to what he doesn't initially live up to what he's supposed to live up to. He's going to he is going to end up rejected by so many people because he's going to become a tax collector, which is where we're going to find him in just a minute. So
those are the worst of the worst.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've covered this. Yeah. He's an enemy, outcast. He is considered ceremonially unclean by the Jewish people. As a matter of fact, so unclean that he's not allowed in the church. Like we don't hold that standard today. I mean, it keeps sinners out. We'd be empty, including the people on stage. I'd be gone. And so he had kind of probably gotten to this place when we're about to meet him, where he's given up being used by God. Life did not turn out the way he dreamed that it would. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where, like, here's my hopes and dreams, and, you know, let's see how that goes.
Feels like a pretty universal experience, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, like, I wrote down some thoughts of, like, so how do you feel when you go, like, your mom and dad has written you off, your spouse stopped believing that you could change, You get into situations where you drink again after being sober for 2 years. There's names that are used to describe you. They're divorced and bankrupt or addicted or fired or failed or angry. And the thing that I think is interesting here as you get into Matthew's story is when you have given up on being loved and you don't love yourself, Jesus has still not given up on you. And that really is where we're going to find Matthew minding his own business one day as we get into his story. But I just thought we needed the setup because I think the reason that Matthew writes the way he writes is because it blew him away the kind of people that Jesus would go after. And the reason it blew him away is he is absolutely one of them.
Are you, and I can maybe tell you a story from my life as well. Are you impressed by Matthew and really every single person who ever finds themselves in that spot where maybe they're ready to give up or they've started to give up and then they're able to turn that corner? Like whether it's through faith or not.
Yeah, because I think I think not giving up is hard. Like if you're in a place of despair, continuing down that spiral is the easier choice.
Right.
Like it's just easier to throw your hands up and go, nobody cares, nobody loves me. There's no hope. There's no coming back from this. Like, and I'm a person who in my head can go into some really bad places. And so like, it's easy to stay there. It's hard. Like there are moments in my marriage where I'm in a bad place and for no other reason. I just woke up and I'm like in a negative place, negative mindset. And my wife's looking at me going like, hey, let's have a good day. And I have every reason to have a good day. I have every reason to have a good life, but I'm stuck in this negative place and it feels almost impossible to get out, and it's easier to stay there. It feels like a lot of work to turn the corner. So yeah, I'm amazed at moments like this because if you read the story of Matthew, you're like, everything went terrible and Matthew went on the rest of his life miserably and died, I'd be like, yeah, I get how you get to that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. And some people watching this right now, they might be having one of those days.
It's important to be reminded that there's hope in the middle of the worst moments of your life. Like, what about you? Like, are you impressed? Like, you amazed when people turn the corner?
Yes. No, absolutely. So one of the things that I always say is every day is a new day and a new chance to turn it around. But it's not even every day. It can be like literally every moment. But
right.
You know, whether it's people, like you said, dealing with whether legal troubles, alcohol, whatever. For me, it's a food issue, and I run into that all the time. Is tomorrow's another shot. Like
right.
And you can start again. And I just, by the way, just a personal note right here for anybody watching. Try really hard to just focus on tomorrow then, because I think what I'm speaking to myself almost, what I get into a bad habit of is I was like, okay, I want to lose X amount of pounds. All right, that's going to take this many years or this many months. And then like, it's so long. Instead of what I really should do, because, you know, obviously tomorrow is not promised, is, you know, focus on the day I'm at. And I'm like, what if we just have a good day today?
Yep.
You know, and then the next day and on and on.
Absolutely. If you string those together, it's amazing where you can get. But that's the thing. Like we so want to like fast forward into the result.
Sure.
And the problem with that, I think, and I think this is where again you see the turning of somebody like Matthew is if God did stuff instantaneously in our life, we would fail to develop the disciplines and habits that are required to stay on that path. So like if you could,
I feel like you'd get numb to the results, right?
Oh yeah, I don't think the results would mean as much to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you'd be like, well, that didn't take any effort, so what's the big deal? Yeah. And so yeah, the fact that it is such a challenging thing to like turn the corner, but the key to it is going to be the same for all of us, and that is that Matthew does not do this on his own. And so just to kind of take us into the text, because it's a pretty short passage that we're going to look at. And for all of you that are listening along, and you are delighted at the wonderful velvety sounds of Wes Barnett as he reads the authoritative word of God, I apologize for how bad this is going to be for you. I hope that your ears will find it palatable in some way, shape, or form as we miss Wes in this moment. So
Let's tell them where we're going to be.
Matthew chapter 9.
9 through 13.
Yep. So as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew, and he was sitting at a toll booth, which is really a tax collector's booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and he followed him. And while he was reclining at the table of his house, many tax collectors and sinners came to eat with Jesus and the disciples, and his disciples. So when the Pharisees saw this, they asked the disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Now, when he heard this, he said, "It is not those who are well who need a doctor, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I did not come to call the righteous, but the sinners."
The doctor analogy, I think, is a really good way to put it all in perspective.
Yeah.
Or a very relatable way.
Yeah. So you find Matthew at this moment, and he's at this booth. He's collecting taxes, so he's out in this public space. Everybody sees him. Everybody hates him. They all loathe him. And Jesus walks up, and he's probably expecting. I mean, if you imagine you're the guy that's like, it's not just taxing, but like Rome wanted a lot of tax, and then the tax collectors collected more on top of that just to oppress the people. That's basically like how they made their living, and they made sure they made a good living. So you imagine every person that approaches him, it's a bit like going to the DMV, right? You're like nobody's coming in happy. Like it's just not a thing. Everybody has complete disdain for you. I don't know what scenario to like if you were going to like an IRS audit. Like this is kind of a similar feeling times like a billion.
For me, and it's not fair to them, it's the dentist.
Oh yeah.
So I'm never stoked to go into the dentist.
Yes, nobody is. And my wife's going to the dentist this week, so you've sparked her thoughts. She's sure excited now.
I think it's going to go great.
It's going to be fantastic. So he's sitting there doing his normal stuff, probably expecting absolutely nothing to go good and no good interactions to come from any of these people.
Because the tax collectors, then, they know that they're despised.
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no. The only people that are going to be interested in him, and you're going to see why these people show up in his life in a minute, are the other tax collectors and people that are considered sinners. So, like the other people that are also horrible and everyone hates, they've kind of formed a gang. But it's the whole "there's no honor among thieves" type situation. Like if one of them gets a chance to step on him to make a move, they probably would do it in a heartbeat. And so. It says like Jesus shows up, and I love the way Jesus starts out. He just comes up and says, "Follow me."
Yeah.
2 words, not. I mean, like if this is your community and you're walking up to one of the worst people that you don't want to have an interaction with, how do you start the conversation?
Hey, can we talk? And then you go into this really long explanation. I cannot envision 2 words. Well, 2 positive words convincing someone to go follow me. And
right.
Yeah. And so like that phrase in particular, we have seen that numerous times. And it just to me is so powerful that like, Jesus is so efficient with his words because he's like, no, this is what you need to know and nothing more, nothing less.
Yep.
And that so many people are willing to, I guess, take that leap of faith or just follow straight away.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in America, we feel the need to over-explain everything, and I mean, we see it in if you watch the difference between an American comedy and a British comedy. The British comedy, they just kind of lean back and let you come to the comedy.
And that's why the season's 6 episodes.
Right, yeah.
That's all you get.
But in America, they're like, we got to make a noise or we got to fall down so it's your cue to laugh, right? Like, so they kind of put it in your face. I think some of that is also true as you look at things in the Middle East, because in all likelihood, Matthew, a lot of things have happened in Jesus' life up to this point. It is a relatively small area. I mean, the entire New Testament plays out in an area roughly the size of New Jersey. So like it is very, very small. And Jesus has traveled, but he's been real close to home. So Matthew's probably heard of this guy. Matthew's heard of the miracles. He's heard all this stuff. He knows what it means when this guy shows up into town. He looks up from his booth, probably expecting to see the next, client he's supposed to like shake down for some cash. And here's this guy that maybe he's seen him in passing, maybe who knows. But he looks at him. He's a rabbi, and they dress a certain way. So there's like ways that you can identify. And he looks at him and says, "Follow me." So follow me is not just like for you and I when we go, let's go follow Christ. It's like, I want you to leave your job, and I want you to come and be a learner, or what we call a disciple, under me. So it's not just going, hey, let's go to lunch. It's, man, I want you to come follow me into a new life.
And you think that is all baked in and implied off of that?
I think Matthew got it from the jump. Like and the reason I say that is because you look at what happens next, because Matthew does. If you were a guy who, one, you're trying to like get rid of all the demons you've got from all the stuff you're doing for people, or doing to people, and at the same time you've got a lot of money, what do you think his free time is like?
Oh yeah, probably doing kind of whatever he wants.
Yeah, man, let's party.
Yeah.
Let's eat, let's drink, let's get some folks together. If I can drown out all the noise, I mean in 2025 we're nothing like this, right? We don't ever attempt to drown out the stuff that's going on in our life. But yeah, I think that's probably, and so what he does next is what's normal to him. He decides, let's get Jesus to the house. And so like he says, come follow him. And he got up and he followed him. And verse 10 says, and while he was reclining at his table at his house, many tax collectors and sinners came to eat with Jesus and the disciples. So it's like Matthew goes like, man, my life is about to fundamentally change. I got to get my friends around this guy, which I love. I think that's an amazing part of the story. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something that I've said many times. Like when you see a lost person become a believer, they are the best evangelists in that moment. Way better than oftentimes what I see from somebody who has been in church for 40 years.
Just because it's also fresh to them? And
I think it is. I think it's fresh. They're excited. I think when you get into it for a long time, you convince yourself that there's reasons you can't do it.
Okay.
As opposed to just going like, I just met somebody. Let's, like if we just met somebody cool we wanted to meet, we'd go tell everybody about it. Yeah. And he wanted to do that. I think sometimes we get so churchy that we end up going like, well, I want to go tell people, but I gotta take a class. I gotta do this thing. I gotta read these books. I gotta go to these programs. And those things are all good, but those are things that you can do while you're learning and while you're sharing. Over and over again in Scripture, you see people that they follow Jesus and immediately they begin to do stuff. Immediately, like Paul immediately begins to preach in the synagogue. Matthew is immediately going to invite people in. Zacchaeus immediately is going to invite people in. The woman at the well, which we covered, the moment Jesus changed her life, she immediately runs into town and goes, "Come meet a man who told me everything I ever did." Like there's an immediacy that is so exciting, and I wish we made a greater effort to hold on to that. It's actually one of the things that I do like about our church. I love about our church is I think we've managed to hold on to some excitement in church.
And you've referenced this. Sometimes the lines get blurred just a little bit to me, whether it was in the podcast or whether it was in a message.
Sunday service, yeah.
Some people are worried about doing that because they're like, what if somebody asks me a question I don't know the answer to?
Right.
Like, I don't know everything. And then you're using all of these examples of some of the people who like we have come to adore more than just about anybody outside of the Holy Trinity. And it's like, well, they might not have had all the answers, but they went out and did.
Yeah. And I think there's something to that. One, in just like go and share your story, but also like, this idea that you've got to have a theology degree to tell somebody that that God's changed your life. Now, is there anything wrong with understanding theology and doctrine? Absolutely not. I'm very passionate about it, but I don't think it's something that you have to. You can still be going and telling, like, just go share whatever knowledge you do have. Like, I remember when I was a kid, it was after, I'm saying this because we just had an off-air conversation about watching the Cowboys documentary. I remember the Super Bowl run. I was actually downtown in Dallas in the parade where all the people came through the barriers. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I was one of them. And I was right up at Troy Aikman's vehicle Emmett's vehicle and like high five those guys.
Really?
Now,
That's neat.
yeah, it was really cool, and then we didn't have parades for a while, but that's a whole nother thing. But I remember in that moment, like I wanted to tell everybody that I'd met Troy. Now, if they'd asked me like what's his favorite color, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I could tell you what I do know. I can tell you his hands are big. I could tell you he seemed like a cool dude. I could tell you still had his mullet in those days, like that kind. I mean, I could tell you that kind of stuff,
Right.
but I couldn't tell you everything. But I could tell you something, and I think sometimes that's what we need to do is go. Yes, you should be learning, but go share what you do know. Matthew's going to jump right into it. He's going to get his friends together, and he's going to go, man, let's jump into this. And that's when the Pharisees show up, and these are the guys who are wanting. It's not that they want to raise the bar. Now, don't get me wrong. I want us to. We always should raise the bar on our faith. We should always call ourselves up to a higher level. The difference is we want to raise the bar so that we achieve it and grow. The Pharisees wanted to raise a bar in a way that they kept people out. They did not want sinners in. They did not want the outcast in. I mean, they saw themselves as righteous and holy based on their deeds.
And they're the gatekeepers
Yes.
to all who can be counted as
Absolutely. So they go, we want to raise the bar not at a place that helps you elevate your spiritual growth. We want to raise the bar to exclude you from any opportunity to be close to God.
So the idea that Jesus, of all folks, would be hanging around with this riffraff probably kind of blew their mind a little bit, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think often we get messed up in the church is broken people come into churches all the time and with all kinds of issues, things that I would disagree with them on, but we still love them and we try to help teach them the truth. And so we sometimes will get, I'll never forget saying this years ago, we'll get people that'll, they would always like, well, where does your church stand on this? And where do your church stand on this? And it's not that we don't have a solid stance on the core doctrines. That's not the point. What people are often doing when they want to say that is they're wanting to do the same thing the Pharisees did. Let's find an exclusionary statement to get rid of these people. And what I look at in Scripture is that Jesus sat with sinners here. He sits down with the woman caught in adultery. He sits with the woman at the well. He sits with Zacchaeus. And I go, I would rather sit where Jesus sat than stand where the Pharisees stood.
Okay.
One of these, Jesus wanted to get in and be close to them, to have a conversation, to get to know them, because he knew that's where their lives going to be transformed in relationship, where the Pharisees were about excluding them from relationship with God.
Is there any part of you, and I hope this doesn't veer off too much, that's why some of these topics get so much play in 2025, because it's a way to maybe kind of like divide people, because like your church can do all these great things, but then somebody might be like, but guess what they think about abortion?
Right.
Like, do you feel like that comes up as a way to like lose the bigger message?
Yeah, I think we as believers, we love to bring up hot topic things, and it's not that there's not a way and a good reason to talk about them, but sometimes people will get more excited about dealing with the hot topic than they do the people that it represents. And so like that to me is such an important thing. Is Jesus would have cared about abortion, but he would very much have cared about that person who had the abortion and wanting them to know that there is a way to have redemption and love and grace and mercy in their life. There is a path to that. And sometimes we like to make things categories of discussion instead of relationships. And when it's a category of discussion, we can debate it all day long. Yeah. But when you attach it to a person, now it becomes something different. Right. And so I think that's what a lot of times we do with hot topics is we try to make them singularly a category of discussion, when the truth is every one of them is attached to a person. And we have to see the issue. It's important, but we have to see the person even more important. Does that make sense?
No, that 100% makes sense. I promise that look was more of was pondering.
Sure.
Not I'm confused by these words you're saying. I was
right.
I was like kind of just reflecting on like even recent interactions. I was like, man, I do not think I'm always doing that so correctly. Then.
Yeah, well, me either. But Jesus does a great job of always, like you've seen it as we've gone through the podcast. He'll address issues, but in a way that they still feel loved.
Yeah.
And it changes their life.
And it feels like he does that. Like, we don't have to dive into this next verse, but it feels like he does that pretty straight away. Because the question is very direct to him, is essentially, why would you spend time with all of these people? And then immediately he does not beat around the bush.
Yeah, well, and that phrase that you're getting to, when the Pharisees are asking the disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? So,
and that question was not to him.
No, that was one of the things I was going to point out. You just see the gossipy, undermining. Like if you're such a, if you're so, big and bad, say it to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. To me, I just see cowardice in this, where I go, man, if you want to address Jesus, he's right there. Like this is in somebody's house, so probably out in a courtyard because they had open living spaces. Otherwise, they'd have been peering in some windows. But like they can see what's happening.
And what's really interesting about that to me, and if you say this is foolish, I will be sad. The tax collectors and the Pharisees, they have this interesting similarity to me in that both seem to know exactly what their role is on the opposite spectrum. Like the tax collectors, they seem to know that people don't like them and they're doing bad things, and that's pretty absolute. But the Pharisees seem to think they're absolutely right and absolutely on the other end, and we'll hear nothing else. And that's just an interesting kind of like juxtaposition is you have these two people talking and they are kind of similar in their sinning or exclusionary policies or whatever. Mm-hmm. But they do not view themselves the same way whatsoever.
No, and you're right. They're both on the outside looking in when it comes to like understanding the things of God, but for vastly different reasons. Yes. One is self-righteousness. The other one is self-destruction, right? And really both of them are self-destructive in some big ways. But neither of them get that there's another way until Jesus enters the picture. And again, this is what I think blows Matthew's mind. Matter of fact, one translation that I was looking at, when it says, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Translates this, why does he eat with such scum?
Oh.
Like it's hardcore.
That's rude.
And then verse 12 says, now when he heard this, so they're not talking to him, but they're talking loud enough that he clocks it. He knows exactly what's going on. And he says this, he says, it is not for those who are well, it's not those who well need a doctor, but those who are sick, which is one of my favorite passages of Scripture. It's such a great picture of the gospel. It's such a great picture of the reason Jesus came. Like when Jesus was once asked, like, why are you here? And he said, I've come to seek and save the lost. Like, I'm here for the broken, the heavy-hearted, those in bondage, those enslaved to sin. Like for them, they're going, why would a spiritual person eat with such broken people? And he's literally responding with going, that's who I'm here for.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly the point, is I'm supposed to be here for them, because in their mind, this is the big difference. In their mind, broken people stay broken.
Yeah.
In Jesus' world, broken people don't have to stay broken. And that's the difference maker. That's the difference of the gospel. And the Pharisees have no context for it at all. Like, this is who I'm here for. I'm the great physician. The Bible's going to tell us that. And I came to heal what is broken inside of them. It makes you wonder, like, and it's part of the reason I set up what I did with Matthew at the beginning. When you think about like all his bad choices, all the rejection he must feel, and the fact that he's kind of like if your name literally is basically priest, and you become, is for them almost as far opposite of that as you could come. How does he feel about himself, right? Like what's his inner monologue that's going on? Do you ever struggle with like those kind of self-destructive thoughts?
Absolutely. Like I talk worse to myself than anybody possibly ever could. And that might be a defense mechanism, but I understand your point in this instance is, he's gone from, and it really is, it feels like the more I've gone along and learned about the different topics that we've talked about, it's really hard to understate how despised the tax collector was.
Yeah.
Like it really is. So when you talk about like how bad that is, that is very true.
And the fact that Jesus says, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Like, that's shocking. I'm here for you, this messed up tax collector. And so he goes on to say to them, go and learn what this means. And he's going to quote from an Old Testament passage, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Do you have any idea what's going on there? What do you think that means?
In my mind, that is his, I don't know, plea, pitch, however you want to describe it, to the Pharisees, to, hey, I'm here for him, but go educate yourself just a little bit, and I'm here for you too.
Yeah, well, if you go back to the passage, which I believe is quoting back in Hosea, I believe. I was going to say Micah, but I think I'm wrong. I think it's in Hosea. And what he's referencing in that text is there's a moment in Hosea where Hosea is he's admonishing. He's really coming down on some people and their religious elitism, and basically they're bringing all of these great sacrifices. So he's not talking about personal sacrifice. He's about like sacrificial offerings. In other words, they're doing religious-looking things.
Okay.
And he's going, basically, they're living off of doing what looks religiously good. And he's like, I'm not interested in your religious activity. I'm interested in showing mercy to people who need mercy. And so that, like, because they're doing, we see it all the time these days. I would say I've done it at times in my life where we play church. You come in, because if you wanted to get away with looking great at church, I could walk in here just not like to preach, but like I could walk in here as just an attendee at a church service. I can drop in amens and praise hallelujahs and all that kind of stuff anywhere that I want. I know how to drop. I can close my eyes and I can lift my hands in the air and I can do that. And the people around me might be going, my goodness, what a spiritual guy. While I am an absolute wreck and have no desire to change whatsoever. Because we see it in church a lot of times now, both for self-righteousness and emotions are good, but I'm going to say it this way. We hyper emotionalize sometimes a worship experience where we come and we go like, I'm going to be super emotional, but there's no transformation. There's no desire for obedience.
Right.
And so like there's a passage in the Old Testament where God says, I don't care about the lifting of your hands, essentially, if your heart is going to be that far from me. Like just to go through the religious motions, just because you know Christianese does not make you great at following God.
And it probably doesn't help if along the way you've done things or said things and you think in your mind, man, what a good person I am.
Yeah. Well, and there's a weird thought that just popped in my head, but like if you're Matthew in this moment and you're I don't know if Matthew is catching this conversation, maybe he's talking to some of his buddies, but if he did, do you think Matthew was sitting there going, I really thought I'd be the one he'd be negative about.
Yeah. Not those are the good people. I'm the bad person.
Right. Yeah. In their culture, they're taught to believe that the Pharisees are the best of the best, usually by the Pharisees.
So how astonishing it must be to hear Jesus saying, no, I'm here for you, buddy.
Yeah.
And kind of looking over and being like, you could probably learn a couple things.
Yeah, and then he's going to pull a fast one on them. He's going to do this whole, like, I did not come for the righteous, but for sinners. And I love the fact that he uses righteous because the Bible is going to tell us, and you're going to get all kinds of references to this in the Old Testament, that there is no one righteous, not even one. So he's kind of pointing out to them their own hypocrisy, where he's like, you're looking down on these people because they're sinners. God came to redeem the sinners, not the righteous. By the way, self-righteous guys, no one's righteous. You're not righteous. I came here for sinners. You're asking why I came and I'm willing to show grace and mercy to this guy. And the truth is you need it too.
And the good news is, with that message in mind, all Pharisees everywhere learned an important lesson and started following the way they should, right?
Wouldn't that be a
would
great
be
turn?
Delightful.
Yes, the Pharisees. Just to get, we'll nerd out on this a little bit. So, the Pharisees are going to really, really struggle when Jesus shows up, and it's because of what's happened right before the book of Matthew. Not chronologically, but like if you look at your Bible and you go back a few pages, you were on it in your Bible just a minute ago. There's going to be a piece of paper between the Old and New Testament in almost every Bible.
Yes.
So on one hand, it's showing you that you're moving into the New Testament. But this piece of paper also represents what's called the intertestamental period, which is 400 years of silence. And what we mean by silence is not that God's not around. He's paying attention to his people, but he's not delivering any new information. He has spoken through the Old Testament, through the law, through the history. He's spoken through the Old Testament prophets. And the people of God are refusing to be to obey what God has said. So God, for 400 years, God does not speak any new revelation, but they're all waiting on the coming Messiah. And 400 years, I don't know if you're much into time. That's a long time. And so when God stays silent for a while,
are there any theories about that specific length of time or the reasoning behind it?
I was terrified you were going to ask me that question.
I really love the minutia-based questions of why this amount.
Well, it's an interesting amount of time because it's somewhat symbolic in Scripture. I have not researched this, but in depth, but it also represents a period of time that represents captivity. So like if you look at the time that the Israelites in the Old Testament are in Egypt in slavery before that they come out of bondage, they are in slavery for 400 years. There is a season here where now you have another 400 years, and there is in the Old Testament. I don't know that this is specifically supposed to be one of them, but there's what's known as the 7 cycles, where the people are following God. God is loving on his people, and he's having them live in his promises. Then they rebel against God. They go into a terrible place. They reject God. God sends a rescuer. That rescuer shows them the way back to God. God has never stopped loving them. They get back on a good place with God, and then they decide to repeat that cycle over and over again. And there's 7 major cycles of that happen throughout like a section of the history of the people of Israel. So, nonetheless, you've had a place where God has withdrawn any new revelation. The thing that's important there is after a certain amount of time, some people go, well, if God's not going to talk, somebody should. That's how the Pharisees come into power.
Okay.
And so the Pharisees step into this void and go, we'll be the voice of God. Why don't we tell you everything we think you need to be doing in order to be righteous? And they begin to manipulate the law, and they do all these kinds of things. So there is a push for spiritual power, but there is also a real play for significant cultural power in this.
Okay, and that kind of leads into my question, kind of partially answers it. I know you'd have to kind of project and extrapolate just a little bit, but do you get the sense that this was mostly done from a good place or mostly done from a power place? Like, because that's the thing we've talked about in previous episodes. It can be dangerous to have somebody who thinks they're doing the right thing. And so do you think that describes the Pharisees, or is it a combination of maybe, but they also wanted power?
Yeah, it's probably very similar to the Christian world that we live in today, is there are some people who are who would be considered very religious that are there for the right motivations and want to do the right thing. And clearly, I mean, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, both today and in the first century, there were also people there that were there to abuse their power. So I think the answer is both. But so in Matthew's story, though, I just want to bring it back to what we talked about I think that this encounter with Jesus is so influential to Matthew that I believe this is why Matthew starts the way he starts. When you look back at the beginning of the book of Matthew, and he talks about all these people you would expect, he goes to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, because these are the forefathers of the kind of the movement of the children of God. But then he gets into Tamar and not Ruth, but like Rahab. You're going to get into some like really Uzziah, Hezekiah, Manasseh. Some of these are good stories. Some of them are really bad stories. And it's like this guest list of Jesus' family lineage. I think the reason that Matthew writes and starts like this is because Matthew wants us to know not a list of the people that Jesus came from. That's what we normally associate with a family tree. But I think he wants us to understand the kind of people Jesus came for. You've got prostitutes, you've got drunkards, you've got broken people, you've got failures. And Matthew's going, I know what it's like to be on that list of names that should never have got invited in, but I got invited in. God said to me, come follow me. And I think Matthew never got over that. And I think being in that list, and him and his tax collector buddies and the sinner buddies that came into his house, they're like, we know what it's like to not be on the list of good people. But this is a guy who gave us a chance to get on the list and to have everything changed.
Yeah, and that feels really humbling to just think, well, who's on the list of good people? Well, we're all on the list, or we all, we all
to a degree,
could be on the list. The
Yeah.
potential is there. God would love us all to be on the list.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing, like the bad people, the broken people, the messed up people get a chance at redemption through Christ, and I think that's the part of Jesus' message and invitation to Matthew that literally forever changed Matthew's life and ultimately changes all of ours as well.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like things in my own life and whatnot, as opposed to responding like I probably should do to the podcast. Because I was just thinking, I was like, man, this is so wild. And I'm just like trying to kind of project into Matthew's shoes about like what a humbling that experience that is. But then I also keep thinking about like opportunities in my life. I'm not saying like I have met Jesus, and I was like, we'll see. But like, from a smaller standpoint, we all have opportunities like this probably presented to us in our life. And like, do you accept them and say, what a great opportunity this is? Or are you like, that will kind of inconvenience me to a certain point,
Yeah. Well, and I think it's an interesting thing, because the life that God is going to call Matthew into is not easier.
Oh, for sure.
From a functional standpoint, the life he was in has got greater wealth. It has a certain amount of respect and respect's not authority is probably the better word. But he doesn't probably want for a lot. But that hasn't filled him up. It hasn't completed him. It hasn't given him a sense of purpose. He's actually going to walk into a much harder life, because there is a greater joy in the harder life that has purpose than a easy life that has none.
How shocking do you think that must be for anybody, let alone Matthew, to realize, hey, there's this other thing here that I didn't even realize, like I really wanted, that would really fill me up.
Yeah.
Like he very well, like you said, could have been completely content with his life, even though people didn't like him. But then you see this other way and you're like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be.
I think you could parallel this very much, and I'm kind of working on this for a message that I'm working on in the future, but it's like there is a major disconnect between what we would consider the American dream and the kingdom dream. So like the American dream is all about my comfort and, basically, don't get me wrong. I love America. There's good things about America. So I'm going to be very hyperbolic in this language that so many people, when they talk about the American dream, it's basically like whoever dies with the most toys wins.
Yeah.
And the kingdom dream is about self-sacrifice and helping others and blessing other people. The American dream is more about my comfort. The kingdom dream is more about sacrifice and discomfort. The American dream is all about what can I get for me. The kingdom dream is what can I do for others. And so it is this major disconnect between these two lives, and it's easy to be sold on the first kingdom and miss it. Like in the American dream, you're living for what you can maximize your 80 plus years on this earth for. In the kingdom dream, what the kingdom would say is you're playing the game of life, but you are only focused on the starting space, because the real living that you're going to experience is actually an eternal living, and it's the rest of the spaces. And so, like, we want to make sure that we understand the difference between these two lives, this kind of dream that we might have versus the calling that God has on our life.
Besides the beautiful way in which he would have read it, what else would Wes want us to say? What is he going to be disappointed that we didn't bring up?
Well, first of all, as much as I love to give him a hard time, I miss my buddy, and Wes, we've missed having you on here. But I think Wes probably, in a very heartfelt way, would have just told me how eloquently I have put things today, and how he admires me tremendously.
He would have also admired that nobody interrupted you for reading the verse for Jason. I'm Kevin. Maybe we bring Wes back for the next one. Maybe we don't. Who's to say? Yeah. That's why I got to stick around and keep watching the Crossroads podcast.